Hello, my name is Aiste Ptakauske, and I'm a cross-cultural communication and storytelling consultant. As you can probably imagine, cross-cultural communication largely involves virtual communication. And since now most of us are forced to study, teach, or work online, I'm often asked how to improve this online working, studying, or teaching experience. Therefore, I would like to share some learnings or takeaways that I got from a project in which I was involved last spring. The project is called Virtual Business Professional, and I think what I learned from that project could really be useful to everyone who's now studying, teaching, or working online. So Virtual Business Professional, or VBP, was a 6-week project during which my students were getting real-life experience of corporate communication. They were developing cutting-edge solutions for 3 clients: Amazon, Google, and Starbucks. Now, at the time, I taught second-year students of international business, university-level students, and the module that I taught was called Cross-Cultural Communication and Management. The Virtual Business Professional project was started in 2013 by a small group of business communication faculty at the Marshall Business School in University of Southern California. Since then, it grew yearly, and in 2019, when I was a part of this project, we had 650 students from 14 universities in 9 countries participating in the project. So the countries that were represented in the project were India, USA, Spain, Germany, Finland, France, Singapore, United States, and Lithuania, represented by me and my students. VBP was a 6-week project during which students worked in international virtual teams. They analyzed online reputation management of the 3 clients that I mentioned and provided recommendations for those clients on the basis of the analysis so that they can improve their online communication. My students performed quite successfully in the project. They were 5 out of 9 winning teams, and one of those 5 teams was even selected the winner by the Google Corporation, which means that management of the Google Corporation looked at the report written or co-written by my students and decided that that was the best report out of all the reports submitted that year. I think a big part of that success of my students was the cooperative learning method that I used to guide my students through the process. The cooperative learning method was developed by the Canadian professor Barry Bennett with his colleagues, and it involves certain conditions that we as instructors or professors, facilitators, employers, managers, should guarantee to our trainee students or employees so that they can feel comfortable in a teamwork environment. So let me share a few tips of how to improve your online environment when forming and managing virtual teams. So condition number 1, set academic and social goals. This is very important because usually when we think about an assignment, we only think about academic or the so-called hard goals. So in our case, we wanted our students to learn to write cooperative reports, to learn to use certain artificial intelligence tools, and to learn to analyze online communication of big global corporations. So that is clear. We all have academic or hard goals. But if we are managing teams, if we are forming teams, that presumes social interaction. Therefore, we have to be explicit about social goals, about what kind of behavior we want our employees or students to learn from the teamwork. In our case, in the case of the VBP project, it was learning virtual collaboration and leadership. So it's very important to set those 2 types of goals, and then of course to assess them at the end of the process. Condition number 2, setting appropriate size of teams. The rule of thumb is that the bigger the team, the higher the competences of individual team members have to be. In our case, we formed teams of 5 to 7 people, but Professor Bennett's recommendation is to form teams of 3 to 4 students. Of course, if you talk about students, that's a little bit a different story. Maybe in the case of employees or more experienced professionals, 5 to 7 member teams is also fine. But Professor Bennett recommends 3 to 4. Moving on. Form diverse teams. Now, cooperative learning is a method that wants to guarantee the learning experience in a teamwork. And we learn best or better from people who are different from us than from people who are similar to us, right? So the basis of diversity, again, can vary depending on your academic goals or hard goals. It can be gender, it can be age, it can be race, it can be ethnicity, it can be competences, it can be the level of experience. In our case, it was multiculturalism. So we wanted to make sure that no 2 members of the same team are physically in the same space. So every team member in one team were either from different states of the United States or from different countries of Asia and Europe. It was very important for us that none of the team members could meet physically. All communication, all collaboration had to happen online. Then, next condition that is necessary for cooperative learning is preparing space and tools. Again, very often this condition is neglected in online collaboration and communication. We think or presume that people know how to use different tools, but very often that's not true. So in our 6-week project, we had week 0, during which we let our students experiment and play with the tools that we wanted them to use. So we wanted them to communicate and hold meetings on Slack. We wanted them to use the Google Translate app for those students who were not that confident in their English. And we wanted them to use a tool called jargon.ai. That's a tool that videotapes your video calls, transcribes them, and then analyzes them in terms of who was engaged or disengaged in the conversation and when. So we wanted our students to have a week just for experimenting with the tools without an additional stress of actually starting the assignment. And that is very important in terms of setting conditions for cooperative learning. Next, team building activities. Very important, especially important for team members who have never met before, but even for team members who know each other fairly well. It's still very important at the beginning of every assignment to have a short team building activity, just to understand the pacing of the teamwork, to kind of set the goals and understand the direction in which we as a team are going. In our case, we did 2 team building activities. We asked our students to do the MBTI personality assessment test, and then we asked them to discuss those tests with each other. So they could either agree or disagree with the results of the tests. What mattered to us was that they discuss those tests with each other, with their teammates, and through this discussion, they reveal their personalities or their characters to their team members. The second activity was sharing a story from their childhood that shaped them the way they are or were at the moment of the assignment. So this activity proved to be very successful because regardless of our status or culture or age or ethnicity, we all had childhoods and we all remember formative experiences from those childhoods. In our case, in the case of our students, after sharing those formative childhood experiences, they understood that regardless of their cultural differences, they can all connect on the basic human level. So team building was very important. Moving on, next condition is discussing roles and responsibilities. Again, according to Professor Barry Bennett, learning in teamwork environment happens only when we teach and discuss social behaviors. We shouldn't presume that people know how to behave in a team, that they know how to work in a team, that they know what their teammates expect from them. Learning doesn't happen in this environment because there's just too much stress trying to second guess what I'm supposed to do socially in a team. Instead, we have to be explicit about our social behaviors that we expect from each other in a team. In our case, our students had to prepare a team charter. In this team charter, they had to describe each other's roles, to agree on each other's tasks, to set ground rules for their collaboration, and to agree on a communication protocol. So they discussed everything, what they expected from each other as a team. Moving on, another very important condition for cooperative learning is setting clear, measurable criteria for success. How are we going to measure if we achieved our academic and social goals? In our case, our academic goals were supposed to be illustrated by the collaborative reports that the students produced, and we evaluated those reports according to 4 criteria: relevance of the report and rigor of analysis, recommendations, quality of recommendations. The recommendations had to be rooted in the analysis and they had to be actionable. Then structure and professionalism of the report, and of course language, because it's a communication assignment, so we expected a certain level of linguistic proficiency from our students. We evaluated the social goals through peer review. We used an online tool which allowed our students to evaluate each other's contribution to the teamwork, and we took those evaluations into account when assessing our students' progress. Next condition that is very important for successful cooperative learning is monitoring, reflecting, and intervening. Again, very often when we form teams and give them an assignment, we just leave them to their own devices. We don't intervene. We don't ask how they're doing. We just expect a result. Not much learning happens under such a condition. We should monitor, reflect, and if necessary, intervene into our team's work. Now, in the case of the VBP project, we asked our students to submit 4 interim reports. Some of them were collective reports, some of them were individual reports, and they showed us what kind of progress they're making. And I personally had weekly meetings with my students. And during those weekly meetings, I would devote 30 to 45 minutes to their VBP project progress. I asked them what they learned after every virtual meetings. I asked them what challenges they faced, and we together tried to figure out how we can make the next virtual meeting better. Also, in addition, whenever they had a virtual meeting coming up, and they had 3 of those in the course of 6 weeks, we would rehearse those virtual meetings physically. And even though the students rehearsed not with the same team members that they had to hold the actual meeting with, the rehearsals really helped understand the potential challenges into which the students might run into during the virtual meeting. So those rehearsals really helped the students to understand what they're supposed to do during the virtual meeting and what they're supposed to achieve. And finally, of course, we need to assess the success of our project according to the criteria that we set for ourselves. In our case, we split the grade for our students because, well, students are assessed by grades. So we split the grade for the project into 2 parts. The first part was 50% was a grade for the collaborative reports. And we graded the reports on the 4 criteria that I've already presented. We had, as professors, we had very extensive and elaborate rubrics. And then the remaining 50% was participation of the students in the project, because for us, it was very important that students hang in there from the beginning to the very end. We wanted to make sure that students go through the entire process, because only then the learning could happen. Only then we could reach our social goals. And of course, interim reports and peer reviews helped us evaluate or assess that participation. So that's it. These are the 9 conditions under which cooperative learning happens. And I hope then they can be helpful to you when organizing your teams and your employees or students' teamwork virtually as well as physically. If you have more questions, you are very welcome to email me. Good luck.